correlates to the uniform colours. It seems easy to point to Science's operations and command and say there you go, done, but the three primary colour uniforms are only the beginning. The myriad of jobs in Starfleet equal more than just three arbitrarily appointed primary colours, so what actually goes into the uniform you wear? Sciences. The blue uniforms, aside from when they were silver in the 2250s, and that grey-beige phase Starfleet went through in the 2270s, and the red phase in the 2280s, asking a scientist what they do and receiving the answer science doesn't really help. So looking at a blue uniform doesn't really tell you much about the career path of the person wearing it, especially in Starfleet, when things like quantum mechanics and warp theory are taught to every cadet. The most basic breakdown we can first look to is medical or other science. The former used to have its own division and even uniform before being lumped in with the rest of those nerds. Despite this, all the healers of Starfleet are bundled into the medical division of Starfleet Science. General science breaks down further into all the differing arms of scientific study, from physics, chemistry, research and development, quantum theory, archaeology, and so on. Needless to say, many in Starfleet joined to pursue a scientific career and end up in the blue. However, as we will see repeatedly, there is often quite a bit of crossover in the divisions based on what your specialisation is. For example, someone who works with artificial intelligences could have started out in the operations before moving over into a designated scientific field and changing uniforms. Plus, Starfleet's R&D is often made up of equal operations and sciences personnel who theorise, then build an experimental device. Operations. Gold uniforms in the 24th century onwards, red in the early days. Like sciences, this can be broken down into obvious dividers, as different as night and day: security, engineering, and operations. These three things are generally considered what is necessary to keep a spaceship, starbase, or fleet for that matter, running. Those who train to neutralise threats, enforce and protect are designated as Starfleet security and encompass most aspects of Starfleet's defense. The other reasons Starfleet has to routinely deny it is a military and include armoury officers and tacticians. Operations and engineers are the techies. On par with the science divisions, see a lot of crossover. The line between sciences and these guys is a little blurred, but basically it seems to boil down to, if it is a job that is vital to the continual functioning of the ship, then you are in operations. If it is the reason that the ship needs to be functional, you're probably in the sciences. Engineering division deals strictly with the workings of a vessel, whether that is maintaining them, improving them, or straight up building them. Operations are generally those who manage graphs, spreadsheets, and compile sensor reports. Command, the red, or gold in days gone by. They are the supervisors. Command division personnel receive making, and it's not always as glamorous as it seems, however. Command roles also included vast swaths of administrative work, logistics, divisions, and accounting. So just because a person is in a command uniform doesn't necessarily mean they're aiming for a ship command. The more exciting roles that the command division encompasses are those on the paths to captain someday and strategic officers. Again, as with all the pride, a lot of overlap. Strategy easily encroaches into the security and operations divisions, and pilots could be from either operations or command backgrounds. Another brief aside, just because you took a command training course or passed the bridge test does not mean you had to transition over to the command division. It just meant that now you are allowed to do so. This means that many who are now technically in the command division may have had a long history in another department, such as Kath Janeway being from Sciences, Jonathan Archer being a pilot, or Riker from operations. Few are the captains who set out on the command path from day one and made it all the way, the most iconic being Captain James T. Kirk. Even then, he spent time as a weapons officer, which could either place him in security operations or tactical command. So that basically covers the colour-coded divisions of Starfleet, and I hope that helped clarify some things. Almost everyone in Starfleet has training in several of these divisions because you can't really do one part of the job without a solid grounding in the others, and certain professions end up leaning into one side or the other when it comes to changing all three divisions and entitle you to don any colour uniform you wanted. Thanks for watching.
They were saying was, you missed this a short, it was a short clip, but they were just saying that still be in other divisions like for example, if I'm going for captain, but I graduated in science, I could still be in the science part like if I wanted it to, or like any other field like security or the other shit. It's like if you are oh my god, if you're dealing with how to keep the shit flowing, you are the engineer. If you are studying the molecules and the particles for the motherfucking engineers to get science, everything else is command. So yeah, we're on to the next video. The ranking system.
Hello, Rick here with a breakdown on the ranking system used throughout Starfleet history. The details behind this system are pretty well understood, even though we've seen different versions of it throughout the Federation's time, and we'll see it's actually rather simplistic. Not everyone in Starfleet was an officer. There were many, arguably most, who were simply crewmen of various non-commissioned ranks, such as Petty Officer, Chief Petty Officer, and Specialists. These, like Chief Miles O'Brien, were technically outranked by the lowliest ensign, but that is no indicator of experience. These officers had their own ranking system, which I'll probably look at in a separate video. Starfleet's officer ranking system has seen some remains very minimalistic and has almost no tiers within a rank.
Thank you for being
Upon
here,
completing a course at Starfleet Academy, or occasionally a similarly accepted Federation institution, a cadet was promoted to the rank of ensign, the lowest officer, but one who would be given command of various tasks while learning on the job for around 3 years. In the early 23rd century, the absence of rank bars served to illustrate the position of ensign, while crew members often had a different uniform altogether. In later eras, this was represented by the single pip on the badge for a 22.
So it says ensign, ensign, lieutenant, junior grade, then lieutenant, lieutenant commander, commander, captain, commodore, rear admiral, vice admiral, admiral, and fleet admiral. So even when I become a captain, I still got 5 more ranks above me. But my story gonna take place as commanders. And okay, cool. So yeah, okay, all right. Already got a graph chart. Bet it up. But yeah, ensign, lieutenant, junior grade, lieutenant commander, commander, captain, commodore, rear admiral, vice admiral, admiral, and fleet admiral.
50s officer on the collar for a mid-24th century one. In 2270, the uniform was changed and a single broken strip represented the ensign, and in the 2280s until the late 2350s, the militaristic shoulder clasps at the time. Occasionally, exemplary individuals were promoted to lieutenant's junior grade right out of the academy, which set them ahead on the career path and opened up more opportunities for them, but this was very rare. The exception to this were those who took the extra time to graduate Starfleet Medical, who graduated at the rank of Lieutenant Junior grade. This was a station that indicated that
and the person that was the exception was Julian fucking Brashear.
Officer in question was ready to take on greater responsibilities and lead small teams of specialists in their field of operation. A lieutenant was the first of the higher command level station and a position of some heft at a posting. Again, certain cadets could be rapidly promoted to this rank straight out of the academy, but only specialized courses offered this. As a fresh ensign, a lieutenant was likely to be your first boss at your and ultimately responsible for an entire operation aboard a vessel, such as the Chief of Sciences, Security, Engineering, or a more specialized role such as Head of Stellar Cartography. Lieutenant Commander was the next up the totem pole and a clear indicator of command, hence the commander part. At this rank, an officer was expected to not only run a department, but usually a member of the senior staff, the long-term positions on a posting. At this rank, it was common to take on greater responsibilities, and this is usually the first rank to see officers in command of entire vessels, although more commonly they served as an
Lieutenant Commander Data,
executive officer role to a commander or a captain. Speaking of, we have the rank of commander.
Data took control
This
of the ship
position
on time.
answered only to the ship's captain and the admiralty, and this rank was only attainable by completing command training or the bridge officers' tests for those not in the command division. It was a rank awarded to those who were capable of acting as a ship's captain and frequently at the head of major divisions of a vessel's operation. Commanders were often seen in three positions: commanding their own small vessel and crew, acting as the first or second officer to a captain, or as a high-ranking department head in a crucial duty. It was expected that those who attained commander and were in Starfleet's command division would ascend to the rank of captain eventually, after around a decade or more of overall service in Starfleet. Captain. Not to be confused with the head of a ship, which was ceremonially addressed as captain regardless of rank. The actual rank of captain was for those who were in charge of a ship's operation. Basically the same thing. In Starfleet, they had shown all the determination, level-headedness, and leadership needed to oversee entire crews and more. Few who enter into Starfleet actually attain the rank of captain, and not everyone seeks it because of the responsibility involved. Captains not only received their orders directly from Starfleet Command, but were exposed as adjuncts to flag enterprises. We saw several captains serving on the same vessel under a captain. The Enterprise is hardly...
Right, because Spock was a captain of his own shit, and Scotty was under Kirk. Because shit, man, Kirk is their friend. It's like, come on, best fucking friend. Not only a captain, but they best friends. You know, but, you know, like, that's the show. That's the show. It was like, but let's go back and hear that again.
Decisions out in the field at a moment's notice, being an authority all to themselves at times. This rank, however, also saw captains serve as adjuncts to flag officers, and in the strange case of the early Enterprises, we saw several captains serving on the same vessel under a captain. The Enterprise is hardly a good example of a typical Starfleet vessel, though.
If you're struggling with the
Vessel, though. Any of them. For a while, there was the rank of Commodore, which has seen implementation and withdrawal from the ranking system of Starfleet over time.
Took it away.
This was superior to Captain, and seems to be a sort of fleet captain rank, used to identify a fleet's commander without them stepping into flag officers' authority, placing them in charge of multiple ships. Moving on from the line officers...
But they brought it back in Discovery, I think.
We enter the Admiralty. These are the people who make the plans, assign missions, deal with other governments, and liaise with the Federation Council. The lowest admirals is the Rear Admiral. These people often oversaw large installations and assigned orders to a select group of captains, but frequently worked alongside the line officers. Any member of the Admiralty could requisition a flagship with authorization and use it as a mobile base. However, technically the ship was still commanded by its own captain, and the Admiral just pointed the captain in the direction they needed to go. Aside from this, Admirals fly desks, not a ship. Vice Admirals often were assigned to oversee operations and endeavours on behalf of Starfleet or the Federation. In times of war, they coordinated battle plans from the front lines and acted as the Admiralty's eyes and ears in the field while having the backing and authority of Starfleet Command.
The girl, I forgot the name of the lady that Picard was talking to, and I think that's the same lady that motherfucking Cisco was talking to too. And the other admiral, the Admiral Ross, I think Admiral Ross is a rear admiral. I mean, damn, not a rear admiral, but a vice admiral, I think.
Typically, vice admirals acted from star bases.
Yeah, Admiral Ross.
Admirals oversaw entire or several operations involving multiple ships or facilities and had a large sway in the decisions and direction of Starfleet. It was their meetings that advised the Fleet Admiral's actions. They were authorized to speak on behalf of the Federation and her interests in matters of diplomacy, but also acted as the face of Starfleet in other positions, such as at Starfleet Academy. As you may have noticed, the higher up the ranks you go, the more politics play out, even for an organisation such as Starfleet, which already is heavily diplomatic. Fleet Admiral is the highest rank in Starfleet, and as the name suggests, the authority of an admiral over entire fleets of ships. The Commander-in-Chief of Starfleet was chosen from these select few, but the irony is that in this position they often spent more time as diplomats delivering reports to the UFP than commanding the fleet. There were a few fleet admirals at a time, we don't know in canon how many, but probably around half a dozen at most, and only one CNC. So that pretty much covers the ranks of Starfleet. However, it is often cited that Starfleet is not a military organisation. Defence is only one of its duties, and we do see this with their ranking system too. It is really rather basic. As mentioned, there are no tiers between the ranks, aside from the multiple admirals and lieutenants, keeping the chain of command fairly simple. However, there are numerous seeming special circumstances where officers of certain ranks end up in different positions. System 2. It is really rather basic. As mentioned, there are no tiers between the ranks, aside from the multiple admirals and lieutenants, keeping the chain of command fairly simple. However, there are numerous seeming special circumstances where officers of certain ranks end up in different positions, despite the rank not typically fitting this role. For example, Kirk basically captained his own flagship in the 2270s and 80s, which is unusual for an admiral. Spock served as first officer while he was a captain, and Commodore...
Captain Kirk, Kirk asked for it and they gave it to him because he was the best. It was like, man, you control the flagship, you can do whatever the fuck you want, bro. You Captain fucking Kirk. You stood up against God, nigga. Do whatever you want, my nigga.
Wormed her way into the head of Earth's Starfleet security position previously held by a member of the Admiralty. Although her title was Director, so that could be different. It seems that Starfleet's rank has a lot to do with how orders are relayed, as expected, but often it's not a factor in where people get appointed, within reason. It does seem that if Starfleet has a particular person in mind for a job, occasionally they'll just assign them that position, but a promotion is not always necessary, and they don't like to stand in the way of a person's own direction and career choices. Someone who starts in Starfleet Medical can obtain the rank of Commander, despite not having command experience, but then take the appropriate training to even make the rank of captain, or perhaps even entering into the Admiralty to oversee Starfleet medical. We also see admirals serving as Starfleet lecturers at times and having active roles among the cadets, taking on protégés and the like. Again, it all seems a bit loose as to who gets to do what and at what rank. So in this aspect, yes, Starfleet is very unmilitaristic. Thanks for watching this video on The Office.
He's like, "Love, man, Kirk want to fly. Let him get his shit." But he's a fucking admiral. He's supposed to be behind a desk. Kirk wants to fly. If he want to be an admiral that fly, let him fly. Shit. He's Captain. He's Admiral Kirk. Look at the outfit. Look at the drip. We let Captain Kirk do whatever he want, man. He flew the flagship. He saved us. And all this shit. He's Captain fucking Kirk. But now about that, this is how you become a captain.
To the captain. So in this video, I thought we could look at just how captains are chosen and how one reaches that rank in the Federation.
Because I gotta put this shit in my story.
For non-Starfleet civilian captains, it's, well, pretty easy. You get a ship and make yourself captain. I mean, of course, there's crew and documentation to consider, but basically it's straightforward as that.
I could do some shit like that.
The most obvious method to command a starship is to enroll at Starfleet Academy with that goal in mind from the start. The command division is called that because, among other duties, it offers the most direct route to the captain's chair. There are numerous classes in diplomacy, resolution, tactics, philosophy, and management that all go into educating a leader. This was collectively referred to as the command training program, and one had to meet the requisite standards to be accepted into it during their second and third years. Someone at Starfleet Academy can literally beeline for a starship command if they wish it, and this is a major pull for ambitious new cadets. However, it is recommended, and in fact mandatory, to take other classes and specialties as you ascend through the years. Kirk is the prime example here. While he wanted to be a captain from day one, and in fact he held the title as the youngest to reach that rank in Starfleet history, his actual studies had him looking more into the tactical side of things. His first appointments were as a weapons officer before entering the command staff and eventually being promoted to captain on the recommendation of Christopher Pike. It also appears that Picard was always in the command division despite pursuing an interest in archaeology. It looks like he graduated in that division too, but it's a little fuzzier on the details in canon. Nevertheless, he's an actual leader. So, someone who passes through the academy might find that they become more drawn towards the idea of captaining a starship, and in this situation they can elect to transfer to the command division instead. From here they can then take the requisite classes and learn how to lead, while also maintaining a backing in their prior choices. This often allows the individual to be able to jump back through the divisions as their roles require it, such as Benjamin Sisko and Worf. Worf began his career in the command division with a focus on tactics, before transferring to security and then back again.
Yep, that's how that'd be for me. I'd be like, yep, I'm in tactics, security, but I got a background in science because I love that shit. So it's like, and then, I'm staying in the command division, go back to science if I want to, fuck with security, and shit. I earned my shit. I earned that shit. But I'm still debating. If I start off as a commander, yeah, okay, cool. I might just do a whole origin. I might have like 2 versions, unless I give that backstory to another character. I could do that. I could probably do that. I could definitely do that.
Sisko enrolled as an engineer and maintained that direction alongside the command program. Catherine Janeway was a science officer in physics and graduated as such before switching to command later in her career under the recommendation of Admiral Owen Paris, which shows us that the requisite training can be given even after graduation. Not all captains in rank are from the command division, though. Are more likely to be appointed as heads of smaller teams on outposts and institutes rather than starship captains, such as Montgomery Scott, who was a captain in rank in the Corps of Engineers. Such positions carried all the authority of a captain, but deferred to the starship captain if they were beyond their home turf. As the rank of captain was not as required in these departments, captains in the departments beyond the command division were rare to see. A solid reminder here, not every aspect of the command division was preparing people for starship command. Starship flight, tactical assessments, and even simple administrative duties were also under the command division's umbrella. In non-canon material, Chekhov makes captain and beyond, but as far as we know in the law, he remained a commander
which means you can still fly the ship, still to the engineering stuff, Bob. You still cold because it's still the command division. So you already know you coming, Vonta.
Officer. To be fair, I'd be totally okay with him being promoted. But for those who progressed through their career without command of a starship in mind, the officer's test was the thing. This was a command aptitude test that had various forms and could be overseen by any command level officer. The test, or tests, focused on looking at the suitability of a candidate to be responsible for the lives of a starship crew, among other traits that could be ultimately failed if the person issuing the test deemed the applicant would be unsuccessful. This would not lock them out of altogether, but would be a definite marker against such a promotion in the future. Passing the test added the officer, even added them to an existing vessel's command staff. The test can be undertaken by any individual of any rank and division, although an ensign is likely to be discounted. We saw Deanna Troy pass the test to become eligible for command roles on the Enterprise if needed, although she had little interest in a command of her own. Beverly Crusher passed this test, and in a potential future was assigned as a medical ship captain. The test can also be taken in the final year, allowing for future postings down the line, such as the career with Hikaru Sulu. Usually, when a new starship is commissioned, or a vacancy in command opens up for a starship command, the Admiralty of Starfleet begins the process of poring over the records of eligible officers. The first place they turn to is usually the first and second officers of the ship that needs a captain, if it has a crew. But then they expand their search to commanders or commanders across the fleet who may benefit the fleet by being in control of the starship. This period of review is also where recommendations from other admirals, captains, and those in command are weighed. A captain recommending their first officer for a new command is going to do a lot to bolster that commander's chances. Once a selection is made, then the offer goes through to that person, who is then at liberty to deny the they can order someone to assume the role of captain, but seldom do so, even under wartime circumstances. In most cases, the position then comes with the promotion in rank to captain, but not always. Depending on the nature of the vessel, ranks from lieutenant commander and up can assume the role of starship captain. Now, the exception to all of this is an emergency commission. Usually arising in a dire situation, a higher-ranking officer, often the commanding officer at the time, can appoint any individual to temporarily assume command of the vessel. Another such situation could be when a captain is relieved of command. In this instance, it might come with a promotion in rank, but that is not a requisite. It is done. The new captain will inevitably have to report back to Starfleet Command at some point and explain the situation, divulging all relevant logs, and an investigation is conducted. Then the officer may be relieved of their temporary command, or, if the Admiralty sees fit, they can maintain the appointment, making the promotion official and upholding it with a permanent appointment. This sort of ties into the earlier process too, where if a captain perishes, then the next highest officer is in command by default. But that's not entirely the same situation as Battlefield, or for example, or we have Cadet Tim Waters, the Red Squadron, who had a less fortunate end. And these are the methods of commanding a Federation starship. The CPT, straight from the Academy, or the officers' test later on, whatever the division they're of a starship. From here, it examines suitability. Then, from these, the Admiralty selects candidates to place into the chairs by experience. So Janeway's background looks like a great choice. Kirk showed continual from the start. So he made
defiant. And later on in the seasons, I'm grabbing the dog ass intrepid class. The dog ass intrepid class later on. So yep. You see how that go. I know I'm on the battlefield though. God damn, it's shit on some bullshit. But like this the end of the video anyway. We on the next one. We on the next one now. If Q never sent the motherfucker to the board, what the fuck happened? Because we would still end up seeing the board, regardless. We would still end up meeting them. What would happen? We already know what would happen. We'll all fucking die. But at least we'll go down the timeline. But Q never helped. And yes, I said helped because if it wasn't for Q sending the motherfucking Enterprise 7,000 fucking light years to see the fucking board, would have never motherfucking had the capability to defeat them later. But I still think we would have had a chance, but no, not really. It's like it's fucking slim to none, just like wearing out everything, even if we did have Section 31. You know, so yeah. But if Q never helped.
Q who never occurred. To come and made it clear that this was a lesson for the Federation to wake them from their perceived complacency. Now, I've previously done a video that shows that the Federation may have known or suspected of Borg activity for Q never ended.
God damn it. Here we go.
Intervened.
The canon time.
It was after the encounter with the Borg in 2364 that Starfleet began development on countermeasures under the overview of Admiral Hansen. So, without these encounters, the threat would not be realised, and development on anti-Borg tech would not have been prioritised. In the short term, this included tactics and trying new technologies for use against them. However, as Admiral Hansen himself confessed, their efforts were woefully inadequate thanks to a lack of intel on the Borg collective. In the longer term, the Federation had been drawing up new designs for vessels to confront them, beginning work on prototypes like the Akira. But, as we see, when the encounter with the Borg came in 2366, nothing they tried actually worked, and even their deflector beam weapon was neutralized by the estimated knowledge of Captain Picard. What defeated them, after the massacre of Wolf 359, was the mind of Picard revealing how to force a regeneration command into them. While they ultimately defeated the advancing cube, it was the Battle of Wolf 359 that gave Starfleet a push to begin production on ships like the Defiant, designed by Benjamin Sisko and teams, or the Akira, the Norway, and ultimately the Sovereign class. These ships were far more heavily armed and made to be combat ready, something Starfleet historically refused to place emphasis on. The Galaxy class being a good example of this. It had enough power to be a terrifying battleship, but clearly it was not. So, how would this have changed with no forewarning of the Borg?
We did.
Well,
first
we can assume that the Borg would have continued their advance through the fringes of the Alpha and Beta quadrants, harvesting colonies until they passed into the direct system in 2366, triggering a Starfleet investigation. The Enterprise may as well be the responding ship, but they would be unable to confirm the Borg attack, having never encountered them before. The Enterprise would likely have sought out the aggressors, aware of similar reports over the last 2 years with vanishing colonies, and then the USS Lalo, a freighter, still stumbles on the Borg as it did before and is assimilated, but manages to alert UFP to the Borg's location. Upon finding the culprit, communications would be attempted, rebuffed, and then warning shots leading to a Borg attack. Now, the Enterprise may or may not have escaped here. They'd have no anti-Borg firing patterns preloaded, nor a grasp of the scale of the threat. But, being generous, let's say they do escape, leading to the second engagement where Captain Picard was assimilated. I doubt there would have been a rescue mission, as the Enterprise is less likely to have found a way to exploit the Borg's indifference to intruders.
Yeah, so even if they do survive the first encounter, they got to deal with Captain Picard getting kidnapped and assimilated. So now all of his knowledge of everything is with them. It's over. No countermeasure for that. Even if they try, it's a suicide mission.
But again, this changes little, as Picard was, of course, unrecoverable at the time anyway. Now, here's where I think the biggest difference would be. With no earlier inkling as to the threat level the Borg posed, the Wolf 359 task force would not have been as quick to marshal, if there even was one. Definitely no aid from the Klingon Empire. So, the lone cube, now with Picard's insights in the form of Locutus, would have had even less trouble making it to Earth. Now, this would have prompted a much larger response, but it would have been a far messier battle.
Yes.
Again, I'm going to be nice and presume that the Federation was ultimately victorious, as that's not an unforeseeable eventuality.
That's right. Oh, like he trying to get like, yo, what we do survive? No, we're not going to survive. We can survive and escape, but once Picard gets kidnapped, he's gonna stay Locutus.
It's over. It is gonna be the worstest slaughter. It's gonna be worse than Wolf 359. Every ship that come out there to try to take out this cube is gonna fucking die, and the planet will be assimilated. Resistance is futile. It's over. It's over. It's over. It's over. But he's trying to be optimistic. Let's say if the Federation do win, even though it's highly unlikely. And it was bad still, regardless.
That, in time, someone might uncover the same vulnerability to regenerate. But, frankly, I find it unlikely that Picard would have been saved, and he would go to the cube. In fact, I'm going to assume that the Enterprise D would also lost here, defending Earth. But now we have a Federation where the Battle of Sector 001 happened in 2366.
Yep.
It's also entirely possible that Earth fell here to assimilation, allowing the Borg a foothold in the heart of UFP space, and been able to expand from here. Game over.
Yep.
But even if Earth did not fall, we've got a thoroughly shaken Federation, likely with far more casualties than ships. This would have been the inciting incident into ramping up Starfleet's defences, but they would have been strained and scrambling. Now we come to see the usual anti-Borg starships come into the design phase, delayed by 2 years. If Starfleet wanted to fast-track a new Enterprise, then the next might have been another Galaxy class, or if they wanted to hold off on a new top-of-the-line starship, then the Intrepid, as an exploration vessel, would have had its development unaffected by our changes so far, and we might have an Intrepid-class Enterprise E. We have seen how Starfleet responds to an unexpected attack, and it's to call back exploration initiatives and fortify core territories. Word would quickly spread, the Federation is hurting and vulnerable. Speculatively, the Cardassians, Romulans, or even attempts to annex territory now left more by the Federation's armadillo. I doubt there'd have been a Marquis incident, so no Star Trek Voyager. But in the following years, the territorial map of the Alpha and Beta quadrants might radically change. Let's say, however, that Sisko would still be guided to find the wormhole, if he survived our autumn of Sector 001. After all, he was sort of predestined to be the emissary, unless him finding the prophets led to their conception of him, timey-wimey jargon.
Yeah, timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly, nah. Sisko still will have his life because he was chosen. He was chosen, like by the gods of motherfucking Bajor. So even if Wolf 359 doesn't happen, something is still going to happen that's still going to put him on his path. So Sisko timeline doesn't change with or without the timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly stuff.
It'll just be more bloody.
Even if Wolf 359 doesn't happen, still, when the Borg come and have their battle, she's still going to die. It's just going to be more casualties. That's all. It's just going to be worse. It's going to be fucking worse. And no, Sisko would not talk to Picard on the first episode of DS9. He would be talking to somebody else. And due to the anger and rage of motherfucking Commander Sisko, he is going to be more ruthless than ever. He's going to be more ruthless than ever. His timeline still goes on, but he's going to be ruthless. Not too ruthless where he can't command his people or motherfucker be a captain over his people. He just, it's just going to be just more ruthless. It's enough. So we put it together.
Anyway, as we move further away from the inciting difference, things get less certain. Here's the big question that has the largest repercussions. Would this wounded Federation devote as much time and energy to scouting the Gamma Quadrant? Or would they still be prioritizing rebuilding their fleet with newer combat-capable ships?
Starfleet is going to put military over exploration. Like, after the incident with the Borg, and they lose their greatest captain, lose their flagship, lose a great crew, they're going to be like, we're not, we're going to explore second or third. We got to militarize our shit now. It's like, now it's straight up. We killing motherfuckers. It's going straight military. They're going to be focused on straight building Intrepid-class killer ships.
All make to secure the wormhole. I'm fairly certain it's too valuable an asset to lose. But if they spent less time exploring beyond it, it might take them longer to piss off the Dominion.
Right. The Dominion problem.
If they resist, motivated perhaps by the desire to rebuild faster and seek new technologies, then it would spell disaster for them. The Dominion would see their intrusion and seek to eliminate a rival, and the Dominion War would emerge against a Federation in the midst of rebuilding. It is impossible to say how the Dominion prepped to war would have been in the new landscape.
We would have lost.
Changeling infiltrators would likely have continued to manipulate and soften up the other powers, and probably still manipulated the Klingon Empire into war with the UFP. And I don't think it would go well for anyone. By the time of the Dominion invasion proper, Starfleet would not have the fleet it needed to contend with them and the Jem'Hadar. Their anti-Borg ships had proved to be a boon against the Dominion, entering service just as the war reached its peak, and originally being made to counter the Collective. But with a 2-year delay, it's unlikely we would see those combat ships we needed to preserve the Federation. Honestly, I think the Dominion War itself would last less than a year and end with the UFP being forced into being a vassal of the Dominion. On the plus side, it would not be for long, just in time for the 2373 Borg invasion. This is when the film First Contact happened, and how long it took for a second Borg cube to attack the heart of UFP space. But now it's a crippled, subjugated New Dominion territory, still reeling from that conquest and is utterly spent. I think it's safe to say that if the first Borg attack did not result in the assimilation of Earth, the second would. No Picard here to coordinate attacks and destroy the invaders. No Defiance, Akira's, Norway's, or Sabre ships capable of putting up a fight. Sure, the Dominion might actually put up a good defense against the Borg, but I think it's more likely that they simply give up Earth as a sacrificial lamb to stall the collective while they retreat to regroup.
So y'all can have Earth.
By this stage, I see even less chances for a way out, and over the following years, the Borg would expand throughout the UFP space. Voyager was never in the Delta Quadrant, which means they never formulated the pathogen to infect the hive mind. Perhaps some other bright scientist might devise this method of destroying them, a Dominion genetics lab somewhere, or a Romulan facility. But not in time to save the Federation. Many worlds would fall, humans would become one of Trek's displaced species, like the Elorians, and the Dominion would be reigning in the Alpha Quadrant, even if the Borg were eventually defeated. In summary, I think in the short term, we'd lose Picard and the Enterprise as they'd be unclear on just how to address this threat, as demonstrated in Q-Who. This would lead to no battle at Wolf 359, but instead a first battle of Sol. In all likelihood, this sees the end point for Earth, but if they did win, it's only now that they begin upgrading their fleet. Opportunistic powers would deplete the Federation as they went defensive, and the Dominion would have been able to conquer this reduced presence. If they'd survived the first cube, they would not survive the second. One last thing, though. With no Voyager in the Delta Quadrant, the Borg would likely lose to species 8472, which happened, right after the film of First Contact, judging by the stardates. So, there's a bug. And I'm not going to lie, I would love to see a game or a comic series tackle this reality.
Yep, I might have to.
Thanks for watching my speculative
video. It'll be dark. It'll be too fucking dark. It also against the Borg, stepped up against the Dominion, got spanked. Earth took it up. Man, that's a dark ass shit to write. But let me know y'all hear me. We got to the last video, the history of the Klingons. You know, when I start my Klingon book, we're gonna have to know the origin of everything. It's the origin. And then we'll get up out of here. I might come back for an HHN. If not, I don't know.
According to Klingon mythology, the gods, Kortar, the first Klingon male to live in the paradise of Kuitu. Feeling lonely, the gods formed him a female companion, but he grew jealous of this second being, and they fought, ending with Kortar defeated. To his surprise, the female did not kill him and instead proposed an alliance, as they were stronger together. Accepting her proposal, the two united as one and destroyed the gods who created them. A prominent legend repeated at weddings, the Klingon people actually originated from an advanced humanoid progenitor species, living 4.5 billion years in the past, which traveled across the galaxy, seeding worlds with their material, resulting in the eventual evolution of Klingons, humans, Romulans, Cardassians, and thousands of others, evolving into a large, physically powerful species with exceptional courage and a mind for battle. Leadership of their people was often won in combat, and so by the 9th century, their homeworld of Kronos was ruled by the hated tyrant Molor, considered the greatest warrior among them. Inspiring fear in his enemies, the city of Kamchi was left almost entirely undefended when the garrison fled before 500 warriors sent by their cruel ruler. However, one man, the lowborn warrior Kalis, and one woman, the brave Lady Lucara, refused to run and took on the entire army alone. Despite odds, they defeated Molor's forces and began the greatest love story in Klingon history. leading a rebellion against the battle at the River Scrawl, a moment commemorated in a famous Klingon drinking song. Establishing the Klingon Empire, Kahless went on to defeat the armies of the Thekleri, establish a strict code of honor, and develop a robust warrior culture that dominated Klingon society for the next 1500 years. At the end of his reign, legends say Kahless left to take his place in the afterlife of Stovacor, but pointed to a specific spot in the sky before he departed, claiming it was where he would one day return. Pointing to the planet Boreth, it became home to a Klingon monastery devoted to his memory and final prophecy. Though most were happy to see an end to Molor's reign, he was nevertheless remembered as a great warrior, with some even forming the followers of Molor, remaining loyal to his memory. Nevertheless, his time was over, and so under Emperor Kahless the Unforgettable and the imperial dynasties that followed, Kronos developed into a feudal society, with power residing in the noble class, whose families comprised the great houses of the Klingon Empire. From among this aristocracy, a select few served on the High Council, led by a chancellor, aiding the emperor in governing his empire. Although women were greatly valued in Klingon society, viewed as equals on the battlefield, only men were traditionally chosen for the High Council, though some exceptions were made. Enamored with their identity as a warrior culture, the need for battle was a constant source of division for their people, leading great houses to war against each other, and so emperors directed their fury outward, allowing the empire to expand drastically, conquering and subjugating any who resisted. Over most of the next 1500 years, the Klingon Empire was ruled by a series of authoritarian leaders, including men like Emperor Sompek, remembered for his conquest of Tong Bay, ordering the entire population massacred and city burned. Emperor...
All right, I think it's back. Oh man, this is some bullshit. But we're gonna try to get through this. I'm about to roll up. Like if it fuck up again, then I might just leave. You know, cause it's some bullshit. But everybody else live and whatever, but I just get fucked with. Yeah. I'm glad you can hear me.
Reforms. However, the Dark Time, as it was later called, was soon replaced by a return to authoritarian dictatorship and the rise of a third dynasty, which took the names and titles of the last imperial family to create the illusion of an unbroken line. As the centuries went on, the role of their all-powerful emperor diminished, and by the 21st century, the position was abandoned altogether, leaving the empire in the hands of the High Council and Chancellor. Many believed the decline of their honor-bound began with the end of imperial rule, but whatever the cause, as time passed and the empire expanded, the old traditions set forth by Kahless were ignored, seeing Klingon leaders more concerned with using politics and war to satiate their greed, sacrificing the good of the empire for individual ambitions. Expanding greatly throughout the 22nd and 23rd centuries, the empire was considered both a beta and alpha quadrant power, conquering those near their borders while establishing relationships, both positive and negative, with more distant and substantial states. Establishing cordial relations with the Vulcan species by the 21st century, the Klingon Empire first encountered humans when a courier crashed on Earth in 2151, ending up shot by a local farmer. With Earth's allies, the Vulcans, negotiating a deal to prevent war, Captain Archer brought the courier to the Empire, where he delivered a message encoded in his DNA that averted a civil war among the great houses. Throughout the years that followed, Captain Archer had several more encounters with the Klingons, feeling an ever-present hostility between their people. Matters only worsened after the formation of the United Federation of Planets, making them a competing, emerging superpower to the Klingon Empire. Between 2223 and 2256, the two rivals became locked in a tense Cold War, sometimes clashing in skirmishes or minor conflicts like the Battle of Donatu 5. By the end of this Cold War period, the 24 great houses of the Klingon Empire were once again divided and fighting among themselves. However, in 2256, the noble warrior Takuvma successfully gathered all the houses together in order to provoke the Federation, thereby uniting their people to conquer a common foe. Though it cost him his life, Takuvma accomplished his mission in the Battle of the Binary Stars, starting a war between the Empire and Federation. Yet their unity did not last long after his death, and their great houses again fractured, each faction competing to do the most damage possible to their enemies. After a year of fighting, the Federation lost a third of their fleet and were on the verge of losing the war, so Starfleet authorized a secret mission to plant a hydro bomb in a volcano on Kronos to destroy the planet. Yet when the crew of the USS Discovery learned what was happening, they made a deal with the Klingon Laurel, a disciple of Takuvma, giving her the detonator, which she used as leverage against the High Council to be chosen Chancellor and make peace with the Federation. A decade after making peace, war once again loomed when the Klingons demanded the Federation withdraw from a number of planets near their border. Yet war was averted by the Organians, powerful non-corporeal beings who negotiated the Treaty of Organia, establishing a border and neutral zone. Tensions then further relaxed when the Empire gave up their claim to the Arcanus sector, ceding it to the Federation in 2272. Even so, relations remained poor over the ensuing years, making war inevitable, if not for a terrible tragedy in 2293 when overmining destroyed the Klingon moon of Praxis. This catastrophe the Empire to divert significant resources to deal with the environmental aftermath, leaving them little choice but to participate in formal negotiations with the Federation, resulting in the Khitomer long-term peace between them. However, while no longer on the verge of war, relations did not truly improve until an incident involving another neighboring superpower. Though dealings with the Romulan Star Empire were always tumultuous, for a time they were on good terms until 2344. When Romulans invaded the Klingon outpost of Narendra III. Rushing to the defense of the Klingons, the USS Enterprise C was destroyed when they refused to retreat against 4 Romulan warbirds. Witnessing the bravery and honor of this Federation ship, the Empire saw them in a new light, providing a great step forward towards a closer relationship. By the mid-24th century, the Klingon Empire and United Federation of Planets signed the Treaty of Alliance, establishing an official state of friendship and cooperation between them. This alliance created a fundamental shift in the balance of power for the Alpha and Beta quadrants, meaning other great powers, like the Romulan Star Empire and Cardassian Union, would now have to face both the Federation and Klingons should they step out of line. This treaty established many years of peace in the region. However, without an outside enemy to fight, the Klingon houses fell into their pattern, turning against each other. Although the treaty with the Federation made the Klingon Empire one of the 2 greatest powers in the Alpha and Beta quadrants, provided warriors much opportunity for glory, and so some were against the Treaty of Alliance, wishing a return to their conquering ways. Believing that the Romulan Star Empire would make better allies because they were both imperialist expansionary powers, the ancient and influential House of Duras made a secret agreement to undermine their treaty with the Federation. This relationship between the House of Duras and began with the traitor Gerard, who helped them bomb a Klingon outpost on Khitomer, killing 4,000 colonists in 2346. Years later, when the High Council learned the truth about what happened, the House of were far too politically powerful so they blamed the warrior Moog, who died in the attack, as his house was no more and was unlikely to have defenders. Incorrect in this assumption, the Federation officer Worf, son of Moog, presented evidence of his father's innocence, but when he learned that the Empire was at stake, selflessly agreed to accept discommendation as the last of their house. The longest-serving chancellor in their history, Kimpek, kept the great houses at peace and empire prosperous, but as he grew older, new political factions emerged, positioning themselves to challenge for leadership when he passed. Representing the old houses and establishment powers was Duras, son of John, while his opponent Gowron was an outsider, challenging the old corrupt establishment, drawing support from lesser houses and portions of the military. In 2367, Kimpek learned he was dying from poisoning and sent for the famous Federation diplomat Jean-Luc Picard, asking him to serve as arbiter of succession, overseeing the ceremony where rival factions sent their champions to fight a duel to the death for leadership of the Empire. However, he was summoned to investigate the Chancellor's death, as the use of poison was considered dishonorable, and thus the man responsible could not become Chancellor. Throughout the investigation, they learned Duras was secretly working with the Romulans like his father, but before he could be held responsible, he was killed by Worf in an act of vengeance for the murder of his romantic partner. With Duras dead, his sisters Lursa and B'Etor now led their house, possessing more support than Gowron from within the Empire, in addition to continuing their family's relationship with the Romulan Star Empire, who supplied them from the outside. With their power growing, Lursa and B'Etor presented him son of Duras as a candidate to become Chancellor. However, Picard denied the request, as Torral was young and had no victories in battle or qualifications. Withdrawing from the council in protest, the House of Duras began a devastating civil war they were poised to win. Though Gowron gained the support of Worf's secret brother Kurn, who brought 4 squadrons of loyal warriors, they remained badly outnumbered and lost 3 engagements in a row. Unwilling to get directly involved in the conflict, Picard nevertheless wanted to help Gowron's faction in some way, and so convinced the Federation to blockade the Romulan border, preventing them from sending reinforcements to support the House of Duras. A trap then exposed this secret alliance, and the House of Duras quickly lost support, allowing Gowron's forces to claim victory. Emerging as the uncontested Chancellor of the Empire, Gowron reaffirmed their alliance with the Federation, restoring the balance of power in the region. In 2369, clerics at the Temple on Boreth created a clone of Kahless, given memories from their histories and legends. This man, who stood as a living tribute to the original Kahless, was given the ceremonial position of Emperor, though true power remained with the Chancellor. In this same year, the Federation discovered the Bajoran wormhole, providing instant travel to a location in the Gamma Quadrant, 70,000 light-years away. Though this provided many unique opportunities, they soon encountered the Dominion, a Gamma Quadrant superpower ruled by changeling founders, obsessed with dominating what they called solid species to avoid the persecution they experienced in the past. Beginning covert operations in the Alpha Quadrant, the Dominion manipulated the Klingons into launching an unprovoked attack against the Cardassian Union. Despite their alliance, the Federation condemned these actions, leading Gowron to break off relations, pulling out of the Khitomer Accords. Hostilities then worsened when the Klingons demanded territorial concessions, leading to the brief but destructive Federation-Klingon War from 2372 to 2373. Eventually, the two powers realized the Dominion turned them against each other through a changeling infiltrator posing as General Martok, so Chancellor Gowron and Captain Benjamin Sisko of the Federation agreed to reinstate the Khitomer Accords and re-establish a defensive alliance. This alliance, later joined by the Romulans, allowed them to mount a proper defense against what became the Dominion Cardassian invasion force. Playing a key role in the war, for a time, the Klingons fought alone, with the entire defense of the Alpha Quadrant resting on their ships, which were the only ones capable of resisting green energy-dampening weapons. Eventually, the rest of their fleet was upgraded as well, but the prominence of the Klingons was now plain for all to see, giving much attention to the real General Martok, who escaped from a Dominion prison camp and took their forces. Unfortunately, this was a problem for Chancellor Gowron, who felt threatened by his general's rising popularity. Having grown corrupt and paranoid over the years, Gowron put his own selfish interests above the Empire and war efforts and embarked on fated suicide missions to discredit his name, while also taking direct control of their forces on the front lines during a time of crisis. Unwilling to allow this disgrace to continue, Worf, son of Moog, challenged and killed Gowron before making Martok the new Chancellor. With a competent leader once again commanding their warriors, Martok worked with the Federation and Romulans to push back the Dominion, eventually achieving a final victory at the Battle of Cardassia in 2375. Though the Klingons played a large role in saving the Alpha and Beta Quadrants, their casualties and losses were enormous, estimating they would need a decade to recover. Continuing to work and cooperate with their allies, the Klingons eventually joined the Federation by the 26th century.
And that's the story. All the way
A special thanks to Exter.
Dominion War. All the way up to after the Dominion War. So you already know. Shout out to everybody coming through. Just the Star Trek Live. I finally got all the way through it. Hashtag fuck YouTube. And about to roll up and smoke. I might be back later. It all depends. But we'll see what's popping. Comply Vanta, much love to you. Thank you for being here. This is Star Trek Live for all the Star Trek fans out there. I need to put the playlist together. I didn't even put the playlist together yet. But yeah, I gotta head to the store. Gotta grab some more blunts. Yep, grab me some blunts, come back and probably like work on some music. You know, YouTube kind of got me, you know, I'm like, you know. Thank you for being here, Vanta, because I could be cool, you know, because I really, you know, I really feel like just throwing this fucking phone at the goddamn wall. But I'm not gonna do that. But yeah, but fuck YouTube. I hope Cam Tape, you know, let me upload some videos so I can be straight. And I hope they be able to go fucking live. If Cam Tape be like you could do live streaming, I'm straight over there. I'm not dealing with YouTube no more. Salute, live, and learn. What up, though? What up, though? Shouts out. And then I'll catch everybody in a minute.